First Contact and Invasion. High Commander Xerix of the Khazari Dominion stood motionless on the command deck of the dreadnought Inevitable Conquest, all 6 of his amber eyes fixed on the blue-green world displayed on the main view screen. His exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's lights, the polished black carapace marked with the gold insignia of his rank. "Report," he commanded, mandibles clicking softly. Sub-Commander Vector approached with a data tablet. "Preliminary scans complete, High Commander. Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, abundant water, primitive technological development, nuclear fission energy, rudimentary space travel limited to their moon and unmanned probes. No energy shields, no faster-than-light capabilities." Xerix made a dismissive gesture with one of his upper limbs. "Another world of primitives. How many potential labor units?" "Approximately 8 billion sentients, High Commander." "Excellent. The mining colonies on Khazari Prime require new workers." Xerix's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. The Dominion had conquered 17 worlds in his lifetime alone, none presenting any significant challenge. These humans would be no different. "Prepare the invasion fleet. Standard subjugation protocol." "Yes, High Commander." As Vector moved away to relay the orders, Xerix continued to study the planet. The humans had no idea what was coming. They never did. Dr. Elena Reyes squinted through her telescope at the Harvard Observatory, adjusting the focus as she tracked an unusual object that had appeared in Earth's orbit earlier that day. At 42, she had spent her career searching for evidence of extraterrestrial life, though she never imagined finding it like this. "Dr. Reyes, you should see this." Her research assistant, Thomas, called from the computer station. "Multiple objects are descending into the atmosphere. They're changing direction." Elena abandoned her telescope and rushed to the monitor. What she saw made her blood run cold. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, of objects moving in coordinated patterns, slowing as they approached Earth's surface. "Those aren't meteors," she whispered. Then what? A blinding flash erupted from the direction of Boston, followed seconds later by the distant rumble of an explosion. The observatory windows rattled. "Call emergency services," Elena said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the fear gripping her. "Call everyone." Before Thomas could reach for his phone, the power went out. Outside, more flashes lit up the horizon. Captain Marcus Chen of the United States Army Special Forces crouched behind the burned-out hull of an overturned car, watching as 3 Khazari soldiers patrolled the debris-strewn street that had once been part of downtown Shanghai. 3 days had passed since the first ships appeared in the sky. 3 days of hell on Earth. "How many?" whispered Lieutenant Sato beside him. "3 that I can see. Probably more nearby." Marcus adjusted his grip on the modified assault rifle. Standard ammunition had proven nearly useless against the aliens' personal shields, but they'd discovered that coating bullets with certain materials disrupted the shield harmonics just enough to get through. Marcus had been in China for a joint military exercise when the invasion began. Now, with global communications mostly down and conventional military forces decimated, he found himself leading a ragtag group of American and Chinese soldiers in guerrilla operations against the invaders. 10 seconds, then we move," he said. The others nodded, faces grim but determined. The assault was quick and brutal. Their modified weapons tore through the Khazari shields, black ichor spraying from the wounds in their exoskeletons. One alien managed to return fire, its energy weapon scorching the concrete where Sato had been standing moments before. When it was over, Marcus knelt beside one of the fallen aliens, studying its strange anatomy. "Bag any weapons and tech. We'll take it back to the safe house." As they gathered their spoils, a distant rumble shook the ground. Looking up, Marcus saw another massive ship descending through the clouds. "They just keep coming," Sato muttered. Marcus nodded grimly. "Then we'll just have to keep fighting." In the underground bunker beneath what remained of the Pentagon, General Diana Hayes surveyed the grim faces around the emergency command table. Representatives from surviving military and intelligence agencies worldwide were present, either in person or via the few secure communication channels still operational. "Status report," she demanded. Colonel Jackson stood, activating a holographic display showing a map of Earth. Red markers covered nearly every major city. The Khazari, that's what they're calling themselves, have established control points in most major urban centers. Their air superiority is absolute. Conventional military responses have been ineffective. Casualties? Hayes asked, though she dreaded the answer. Current estimates put global military losses at 60%. Civilian casualties? Jackson hesitated. "We're looking at hundreds of millions, ma'am." A heavy silence fell over the room. "They're not just killing us," said Dr. Wei Lin, head of the newly formed Xenobiology Division. "They're taking people, millions of them, onto their ships." "Slave labor," said the Russian general, Petrov. "According to the broadcast they sent before jamming our communications, submit and serve or resist and perish." General Hayes studied the map, mind racing through options that dwindled by the hour. "They expect us to surrender," she said finally. "They expect us to bow down and accept enslavement." She looked around the room, meeting each person's gaze. They clearly don't understand humans very well. High Commander Xerix reviewed the casualty reports with growing disbelief. 1 week into what should have been a routine acquisition, and his forces had sustained losses approaching 15%. 15% against primitives with no energy weapons, no shields, no space fleet. "Explain this," he demanded, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Sub-Commander Vector stood at attention, visibly uncomfortable. "The humans are not responding according to predictive models, High Commander. They refuse to surrender despite overwhelming technological disadvantage. Their resistance is unusual." "Unusual how?" "They don't fight conventionally. When we destroy their military bases, they disperse into smaller units. They adapt rapidly, already modifying their primitive weapons to partially penetrate our shields. They sacrifice themselves in seemingly irrational attacks that nevertheless damage our forces." Vector hesitated. "And everyone fights, not just their warriors. We've been attacked by their scientists, their food providers, even their young." Xerix stared at the data scrolling across his screen. "Have we ever encountered a species like this?" "No, High Commander. The database has no comparable examples." For the first time in his long career, Xerix felt a flicker of uncertainty. "Increase the intensity of the subjugation protocols. Deploy the second wave. I want this resistance crushed within 1 orbital cycle." "Yes, High Commander." As Vector departed, Xerix turned to the view screen, watching the blue-green planet rotating below. These humans were proving troublesome, but ultimately it wouldn't matter. The Khazari Dominion had never failed to conquer a world, and this one would be no different. He was wrong. 3 months after the invasion began, Dr. Elena Reyes stood in an underground laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by salvaged Khazari technology. She had been brought here after the Harvard Observatory was destroyed, identified by the Resistance as one of the few xenobiologists who might help understand their enemy. "Their energy weapons operate on principles similar to plasma physics," she explained to General Hayes, who had come to check on her progress. "But there's something more, a subatomic interaction we haven't fully grasped yet." Hayes nodded, though the science was beyond her. What mattered were results. "Can we replicate it?" "Not yet, but we've made progress with their shield technology." Elena led Hayes to another workstation, where a captured Khazari shield generator had been partially disassembled. "The shields operate on a frequency that varies according to a mathematical sequence. If we can predict the sequence, we can calibrate our weapons to pass through." "Exactly." Elena rubbed her tired eyes. She hadn't slept more than 4 hours at a stretch since the invasion began. "There's something else, General. Their biology. It's carbon-based like ours, but with a different chirality. Their amino acids are mirror images of our own. What does that mean for us?" "It means they can't digest our food, for one thing. More importantly, it gives us potential avenues for biological countermeasures. Elena hesitated. We're not just talking about weapons anymore. We're talking about ways to target them specifically without harming humans. Hayes studied her face. You have ethical concerns. Of course I do. But Elena looked around the lab, at the pieces of alien technology that had been used to slaughter millions. They didn't give us much choice, did they? Captain Marcus Chen's guerrilla force had grown. What started as a dozen soldiers was now a resistance army of thousands, operating out of the vast network of tunnels and sewers beneath Shanghai. Similar resistance cells had formed in every occupied city around the world. Tonight's target was a Khazari processing center, a repurposed sports stadium where captured humans were sorted before being transported to the ships. Intelligence suggested over 2,000 prisoners were being held inside. Teams in position. Marcus asked over the secure comm system they'd cobbled together from civilian and military tech. Alpha team ready. Beta team in position. Gamma team standing by. Marcus checked his weapon. A modified assault rifle now incorporating salvaged components from Khazari energy weapons. Their understanding of the alien technology was growing by the day. Remember, primary objective is prisoner extraction. Secondary objective is capture of any intelligence or technology. Minimize engagement with Khazari forces when possible. He paused. But if you do engage, make it count. Execute on my mark in 3, 2, 1, go. The coordinated assault hit the Khazari from multiple directions simultaneously. The aliens had grown complacent, not expecting such organization from the primitives they thought they'd subjugated. Marcus led Alpha Team through the main entrance, their modified weapons cutting through Khazari shields. The aliens returned fire, their energy weapons scorching concrete and melting metal, but the humans moved with practiced efficiency, using the environment for cover. As they reached the central arena where the prisoners were being held, Marcus saw something that made his blood boil. Humans in restraints, being examined by Khazari scientists, categorized like cattle. Alpha Team, secure the prisoners, he ordered. Beta, watch our backs. As his soldiers moved to free the captives, a Khazari officer emerged from a side door, flanked by guards. Unlike the common soldiers, this one wore an exoskeleton marked with gold insignia. Marcus didn't hesitate. He raised his weapon and fired a burst directly at the officer. The modified bullets penetrated the shield, black ichor spraying from the Khazari's body as it collapsed. Commander down. One of the guards clicked in their strange language, which human linguists had begun to decipher. The remaining Khazari fell back in disarray, another trait humans had discovered. The aliens relied heavily on hierarchical command. Removed their leaders, and their coordination suffered dramatically. As the last prisoners were freed and guided toward the extraction points, Marcus approached the fallen Khazari officer. Unlike the others, this one wasn't dead yet. Its amber eyes fixed on Marcus with what he could only interpret as shock. Why fight? The alien clicked, the words translated through a device developed by the resistance. Cannot win. Marcus knelt beside the dying creature. That's where you're wrong, he said. Humans don't know how to quit. We don't know how to surrender. You should have studied us better before you came here. The Khazari's eyes dimmed as life left its body. Sir, called Lieutenant Sado. All prisoners secure. Extraction teams are moving out. Marcus stood, taking one last look at the dead alien. Let's go, and grab that officer's data tablet. Intelligence will want to see it. As they escaped into the night, more Khazari ships descended through the clouds, reinforcements arriving to bolster the invasion. But for the first time since the aliens appeared, Marcus felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Because despite all odds, humanity wasn't just surviving. It was beginning to fight back. Adaptation and counterattack. 6 months after the Khazari invasion began, the face of Earth had changed irrevocably. Major cities lay in ruins, billions were dead or captured, and the survivors had been forced underground. Literally, in many cases. But in those underground bunkers, tunnel networks, and mountain fortresses, humanity had done what it did best: adapt. Dr. Elena Reyes stood before the assembled leaders of the Global Defense Coalition, the unified command structure that had replaced the fractured governments of the pre-invasion world. General Hayes sat at the center of the table, flanked by military and civilian leaders from around the globe. The Khazari shield harmonic patterns are no longer a mystery to us, Elena said, activating a holographic display that showed complex waveforms. Thanks to the data captured by Captain Chen's team in Shanghai, we've completed our analysis of their shield technology. She pressed a control, and the display changed to show a new weapon design. Sleek, with elements clearly inspired by Khazari technology, but unmistakably of human manufacture. This is the M1 disruptor rifle. It generates an energy pulse precisely calibrated to pass through Khazari shields as if they weren't there. Elena allowed herself a small smile. We've already begun production at facilities around the world. Within 2 weeks, every resistance cell will be equipped with them. General Hayes nodded, a glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. Excellent work, Doctor. What about the larger applications we discussed? Elena switched the display again. The same principles can be scaled up for vehicle-mounted weapons and even orbital platforms. We've also integrated the technology into conventional missiles and artillery shells. And Project Prometheus? Asked the Chinese representative, General Lai. Elena hesitated. That's proceeding. We've successfully reverse-engineered the Khazari FTL drive. The prototype is being installed on the Defiance as we speak. A murmur ran through the room. The Defiance, formerly a nuclear submarine converted into humanity's first starship, represented something that had seemed impossible just months ago: the ability to take the fight beyond Earth. Timeline? Hayes asked. 2 more weeks for completion and testing. After that, Elena shrugged. We'll be ready to strike targets beyond our atmosphere. General Hayes stood, addressing the room. For 6 months, we've been on the defensive. We've lost cities, nations, billions of lives. But we've also learned. We've adapted. And now, it's time to show the Khazari what happens when you underestimate humanity. She turned to the operational commander, General Rodriguez, present the battle plan. Rodriguez stood, activating a global tactical display. Operation Thunderstrike begins in exactly 14 days. A coordinated global offensive against all major Khazari strongholds, using our new shield-penetrating weapons. Simultaneously, resistance cells will target their command and control centers. He zoomed in on specific locations. Primary targets include their main processing centers in former New York, Beijing, Moscow, and London, plus their orbital command stations. Casualties? Asked the European representative. Rodriguez's expression hardened. High. Even with our new weapons, the Khazari still outnumber and outgun us. But every simulation shows the same result. This is our best chance to cripple their occupation force before their main fleet arrives. Their main fleet? The question came from the African representative, eyes wide with alarm. General Hayes nodded grimly. Intelligence captured from their command networks indicates the Khazari have called for reinforcements. A larger invasion fleet is en route from their home system. Estimated arrival: 4 months. Silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. If Earth couldn't break the current occupation, a second, larger invasion would mean the end of human resistance. Then we have no choice, said General Lute finally. We strike now, with everything we have. Hayes surveyed the room, meeting each leader's gaze in turn. Operation Thunderstrike commences in 14 days. May God, or whatever higher power you believe in, help us all. Captain Marcus Chen crouched in the shadow of a burned-out skyscraper, studying the Khazari Processing Center through high-powered binoculars. Once the Shanghai Financial Center, the building now served as a fortress for the aliens, its distinctive rounded top modified with strange angular structures of Khazari design. "Count?" asked Lieutenant Sato beside him. "At least 50 ground troops visible, probably twice that inside." Marcus lowered the binoculars. "Heavy weapons emplacements on levels 10, 20, and 30. Air support on standby. I count 3 dropships on the roof." He turned to face his assault team. 20 of his best fighters, equipped with the new disruptor rifles that had arrived via the underground network 3 days ago. The weapons looked almost elegant, a blend of human pragmatism and alien technology. "We've run the simulations. We've trained with the new weapons. This is what we've been waiting for." Marcus checked the charge on his own disruptor. "Our objective is the command center on level 40. Intelligence believes a Khazari sub-commander is stationed there. Secondary objective is to free any human prisoners." He looked at each face in turn. Once they had been soldiers from different nations. Now they were simply humans fighting for their species' survival. Questions. A young woman who had once been a Shanghai police officer raised her hand. "Sir, what about the civilian collaborators?" It was a difficult question. Some humans, either through fear or opportunism, had begun working with the Khazari, serving as interpreters and overseers for their own kind. "Non-lethal force when possible," Marcus answered. "They'll face justice after liberation, not before." He checked his timepiece. "Synchronize with Global Command. Operation Thunderstrike begins in 30 minutes." As his team made final preparations, Marcus found a moment of solitude, staring at the alien structure dominating what had once been a symbol of human achievement. 6 months ago, he had been a Special Forces captain leading training exercises. Now he commanded a resistance army in what might be humanity's last, best hope for survival. "For Earth," he whispered to himself. High Commander Xerix paced the command deck of the inevitable conquest, mandibles clicking in agitation as he reviewed the latest reports. 6 months of occupation, and the humans continued to resist. Worse, they were adapting at an alarming rate, incorporating Khazari technology into their own weapons. Casualties continue to increase. High Commander reported Sub-Commander Vector. Resistance attacks have risen by 40% in the last lunar cycle. They've begun targeting our command personnel specifically. Xerix made a dismissive gesture. They're primitives with stolen technology. Increase security at all command centers. Double the patrols in occupied zones. With respect, High Commander, our forces are already stretched thin. The humans' guerrilla tactics require disproportionate resources to counter. Xerix stopped pacing, all 6 eyes fixing on Vector. "Are you suggesting the mighty Khazari Dominion cannot control a single primitive world?" Vector's posture stiffened. "No, High Commander. I merely suggest that traditional subjugation protocols may be inadequate for these particular primitives." Before Xerix could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The tactical officer rushed to his station. "Multiple attacks reported planet-wide. High Commander. All major control centers under assault simultaneously." The main view screen activated, showing live feeds from around the planet. Xerix watched in disbelief as human forces armed with energy weapons, weapons that somehow bypassed Khazari shields, stormed their fortifications. "Impossible," he hissed. "They cannot have developed such technology so quickly." "High Commander," the communications officer called. "We're receiving distress calls from orbital stations 3, 7, and 12. They report human attackers aboard, inside their shields." Xerix's mind raced. How had the humans managed this? Their species had barely achieved spaceflight before the invasion. Now they were boarding Khazari battle stations. "Order all command personnel to fall back to secondary positions," he commanded. "Deploy elite guard units to protect vital installations. And prepare my shuttle. I will personally take command of the defense of Primary Processing Center 1. As his officers rushed to comply, Xerix stared at the view screen, watching human forces overrun a Khazari stronghold in what had once been their New York City. For the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Dr. Elena Reyes stood in the control center of humanity's first starship, the Defiance. Around her, engineers and scientists monitored systems reverse-engineered from captured Khazari technology. The vessel had once been the U.S. Ohio, a ballistic missile submarine. Now it had been transformed into humanity's first interstellar vessel, its nuclear missiles replaced with weapons based on Khazari designs. All systems operational, Doctor, reported the chief engineer. FTL drive is stable. Weapons and shields at full capacity. Elena nodded, trying to control her nerves. She was a scientist, not a military commander, but her understanding of Khazari technology had made her the logical choice to lead this mission. Status of Operation Thunderstrike, she asked the communications officer. Ground forces have engaged at all primary targets. Orbital strikes successful at stations 3, 7, and 12. Resistance reports heavy fighting but significant advances. Elena turned to the tactical display, showing the Defiance's target, a Khazari supply ship in high Earth orbit. Time to intercept. 12 minutes, Doctor. She took a deep breath. Begin final approach. Maintain stealth protocols until we're within weapons range. As the Defiance silently glided through space, Elena thought about how far humanity had come in 6 months. From a species on the brink of extinction to one that now hunted its would-be conquerors among the stars. The tactical officer's voice broke into her thoughts. Target in visual range, Doctor. On the main screen, the Khazari vessel appeared, angular, alien, threatening. The Defiance had approached from the planet's shadow, using Earth itself to mask their presence. They've detected us, reported the sensor officer. They're powering weapons and shields. Too late, Elena said softly. Fire disruptors. Energy beams lanced from the Defiance, passing through the Khazari shields as if they weren't there. The alien vessel shuddered as the beams struck its hull, atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. Direct hits, the tactical officer confirmed. Their shields are ineffective against our weapons. Prepare boarding teams, Elena ordered. We need that ship intact. As the Defiance maneuvered alongside the crippled Khazari vessel, Elena allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The plan had worked. Humanity's first space battle had ended in victory, but she knew it was just the beginning. Operation Thunderstrike raged across the planet for 72 hours without pause. Human forces, armed with weapons that rendered Khazari shields useless, struck at every alien stronghold simultaneously. The Resistance had spent months gathering intelligence, identifying weaknesses, planning their attacks with meticulous care. For the Khazari, accustomed to easy conquests of less adaptable species, it was a nightmare. Their hierarchical command structure, once a strength, became a fatal weakness as humans specifically targeted officers. Their reliance on shields, previously impenetrable to primitive weapons, left them vulnerable to the new disruptor technology. In Shanghai, Captain Chen led his team through the fortified financial center, their disruptor rifles cutting down Khazari soldiers with brutal efficiency. They fought floor by floor, room by room, freeing human prisoners as they advanced. On level 40, they found what intelligence had indicated: a Khazari command center. Inside, a sub-commander and its staff coordinated the increasingly desperate defense of the city. Breach and clear, Marcus ordered. His team placed charges on the reinforced doors, then took cover as the explosion ripped through the entrance. They stormed in through the smoke, disruptors firing. Most of the Khazari fell immediately, but the sub-commander activated a personal shield device, more powerful than the standard models, and returned fire, its energy weapon scorching the wall behind Marcus. Concentrate fire, he shouted. Multiple disruptor beams struck the sub-commander simultaneously. For a moment, its enhanced shield held, then fractured, the beams penetrating its exoskeleton. The alien collapsed, black ichor pooling beneath it. Secure the room, Marcus ordered. Download everything from their systems. As his team worked, Marcus approached the dying sub-commander. its amber eyes fixed on him with what seemed like disbelief. How? It clicked weakly. Impossible. You should have left us alone, Marcus said simply. The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly. Laughter, perhaps. Too late, it managed. Main fleet, coming. Millions of warriors. You cannot. We'll see about that, Marcus replied. Then, unexpectedly, he felt a flicker of curiosity. Why? Why invade us at all? The sub-commander's eyes dimmed. Resources, labor, expansion. The Dominion must grow. Its voice weakened. Always grow. Consume, conquer. Not anymore, Marcus said. Not here. The alien's eyes went dark as life left its body. Lieutenant Sato approached. Downloads complete, sir, and you'll want to see this. She handed him a data tablet. It's their battle plans, deployment schedules, and information about the reinforcement fleet. Marcus studied the data, his expression growing grim. Get this to command immediately, and tell them we've secured the building. As his team raised the human resistance flag atop what had once been the Shanghai Financial Center, Marcus looked out over the burning city. Operation Thunderstrike was succeeding. Reports indicated human victories around the globe, but the data tablet in his hand confirmed their worst fears. The Khazari reinforcement fleet was massive, far larger than they had estimated, and it would arrive in less than 3 months. On the 14th day of Operation Thunderstrike, representatives of the Global Defense Coalition gathered again in the underground command center. The mood was cautiously triumphant. 70% of Khazari ground forces eliminated, General Rodriguez reported. 65% of their orbital presence neutralized or captured. We've liberated processing centers in 22 major cities and freed over 6 million captives. General Hayes nodded. And our casualties. Rodriguez's expression sobered. Approximately 30% of engaged forces. High, but within projected parameters. Dr. Elena Reyes spoke next. The Defiance mission was a complete success. We've captured an intact Khazari supply vessel with significant technological assets and intelligence. More importantly, we've proven that we can take the fight to space. And what have we learned about the reinforcement fleet? Hayes asked. Elena activated a holographic display showing data from the captured Khazari networks. It's worse than we thought. Over 2,000 ships, including 5 dreadnoughts. Conservative estimates put their troop strength at 10 million Khazari warriors. Silence fell over the room. Can we stop them? General Lee finally asked. Elena hesitated. With our current capabilities? No. Even with the disruptor technology, they simply outnumber us too greatly. Then we need greater capabilities, Hayes said firmly. Dr. Reyes, what's the status of Project Prometheus? Phase 1 is complete. We have FTL capability as demonstrated by the Defiance. Phase 2, weaponizing the drive technology, is still theoretical. Yet as she contemplated the alternative, human extinction, she knew they had no choice. Whatever it takes, she whispered to herself. Whatever it takes. High Commander Xerix knelt before the holographic projection of Supreme Overlord Khazix, ruler of the Khazari Dominion. The humiliation was nearly unbearable, but protocol demanded the posture of submission after such failure. Explain yourself, High Commander. The Supreme Overlord's voice boomed. How have primitives who had not even achieved space travel managed to defeat our forces? They are, unlike other species, Supreme Overlord, Xerix replied carefully. They adapt with unprecedented speed. They have reverse-engineered our technology and developed countermeasures to our shields. Excuses, hissed the Supreme Overlord. Your failure brings shame to the Dominion. Xerix kept his eyes lowered. The reinforcement fleet will arrive soon. Supreme Overlord, with such overwhelming force, even these humans cannot prevail. See that they don't. The holographic figure leaned forward menacingly. I have appointed Fleet Admiral Khazix to command the reinforcements. You will serve under him and redeem yourself, or face dissolution. I understand. Supreme Overlord. As the projection faded, Xerix rose, mandibles clicking with rage and humiliation. After a career of flawless conquests, to be reduced to a subordinate because of these humans. "Prepare my shuttle," he ordered a nearby aide. "I will inspect our remaining ground forces personally." As his vessel descended toward the planet, Xerix stared at the scared surface of Earth. Operation Thunderstrike had been devastating for his forces, but he refused to believe the humans could ultimately triumph. The reinforcement fleet would crush them, and he would personally oversee the punishment of their leaders. Yet deep within, an unfamiliar sensation persisted: doubt. These humans were unlike any species the Dominion had encountered in its long history of conquest. They fought with a ferocity and adaptability that defied conventional understanding. For the first time, Xerix found himself wondering, what if they couldn't be conquered? What would that mean for the Dominion that had known only victory for millennia? He pushed the troubling thoughts aside. The reinforcement fleet would arrive soon, and when it did, humanity would learn the true meaning of subjugation. The final stand. The Khazari reinforcement fleet arrived exactly 89 days after Operation Thunderstrike began. Thousands of ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, their appearance heralding what could be humanity's final hours. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, the Global Defense Coalition watched in grim silence as the sensor network, enhanced with Khazari technology, tracked the alien armada's approach. "Time to Earth orbit," General Hayes asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Approximately 6 hours at their current speed," responded the tactical officer. Hayes turned to Dr. Elena Reyes. "Status of Project Prometheus." Elena met her gaze directly. "Ready for deployment, General. All 3 prototype devices are installed on our converted vessels." A murmur ran through the command center. Few knew the details of Project Prometheus. Elena had insisted on compartmentalizing the information, both for security and because of the ethical implications. "And you're certain of the effects?" Hayes pressed. "As certain as theoretical physics allows, yes." Elena's voice was soft but firm. "The devices will work. The question is whether we can get them into position." Hayes nodded, then addressed the gathered coalition leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've known this day was coming. For 3 months, we've prepared, we've built, we've trained. Today, we execute Operation Valkyrie." She activated the holographic display showing Earth and the approaching Khazari fleet. "We have 3 converted vessels equipped with Prometheus devices. Each must reach its designated target within the Khazari formation. Simultaneously, our ground and orbital forces will engage the enemy, creating the diversion needed for our strike teams to reach their objectives." Hayes looked around the room, meeting each leader's eyes. "I won't lie to you. The odds are against us. But the alternative is extinction or eternal slavery. We've come too far to surrender now." General Rodriguez stood. "Strike teams are prepped and ready, General. Captain Chen will lead Alpha Team on the Defiance." "Very well." Hayes straightened her uniform. "Commence Operation Valkyrie, and may God be with us all." Fleet Admiral Krazix stood on the command deck of the Khazari dreadnought Eternal Dominion, watching as Earth grew larger on the main view screen. His exoskeleton, marked with the crimson insignia of his elite rank, gleamed under the ship's lights. "Report," he commanded. "All vessels in formation." "Fleet Admiral," replied his second-in-command. "No significant resistance detected. The humans appear to be marshaling what remains of their forces near their planet." As expected, Krazix's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. They will make their last stand around their homeworld. Pitiful, but predictable. High Commander Xerix approached, his posture deferential as protocol demanded when addressing a superior. "Fleet Admiral, with respect, I must caution against overconfidence. These humans have proven unusually adaptive and resourceful." Krazix fixed all 6 eyes on Xerix. "Your failure to subjugate them is precisely why I am now in command, High Commander. The Supreme Overlord was most displeased with your performance." Xerx's mandibles tightened, but he maintained composure. "I merely suggest we approach with caution. The humans have reverse-engineered much of our technology, including shield penetration capabilities, which is why we will not engage at close range." Krazix replied dismissively. "We will commence orbital bombardment from maximum distance until their defenses are neutralized. Only then will ground forces deploy to secure what remains." He turned away from Xerx, ending the conversation. "Prepare all vessels for combat. I want weapons charged and targeting systems locked on their major population centers and military installations. We will teach these primitives the price of defiance." As Xerx moved to a subordinate position on the command deck, he couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Something about the human defense patterns seemed wrong. Too concentrated, too obvious. After months of fighting them, he had learned one crucial lesson. Humans were rarely predictable. Captain Marcus Chen strapped himself into the command chair of the Defiance. The vessel had been extensively modified since its first mission, incorporating more Khazari technology while maintaining its stealth capabilities. Around him, his handpicked team, a mix of soldiers and engineers from a dozen countries, prepared for what might be humanity's final mission. "All systems operational, Captain," reported Lieutenant Sato from the tactical station. "Prometheus device is stable." Marcus nodded, checking the mission timer. "Synchronize with Global Command. Operation Valkyrie commences in 30 minutes. He activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is Captain Chen. In half an hour, we launch on the most important mission in human history. Our objective is simple but not easy. Deliver the Prometheus device to the designated target within the Khazari fleet." He paused, looking at the determined faces of his crew. "You all know the stakes. You know what happens if we fail. But remember this. 6 months ago, these aliens thought we would surrender within days. They thought we were primitive, weak, incapable of fighting back. They were wrong then, and they're wrong now." Marcus leaned forward in his chair. "Whatever happens today, we've already proven what humanity is capable of. We didn't break. We didn't surrender. We fought. We adapted. We survived. And now we're taking the fight to them." He checked the timer again. "Final preparations. Operation Valkyrie begins in 27 minutes. As his crew returned to their stations, Marcus pulled up the tactical display showing the massive Khazari fleet approaching Earth. Somewhere in that formation was their target, one of 3 dreadnoughts commanding the armée. The Defiance had to get close enough to deploy the Prometheus device, then escape the blast radius. The odds of success were minuscule, the odds of survival even smaller. But as Marcus had told his crew, humanity had already defied the odds simply by lasting this long against an enemy with vastly superior technology. Today, they would defy them again, or die trying. Dr. Elena Reyes stood in the Auxiliary Command Center, monitoring the status of all 3 Prometheus devices. The technology was based on the Khazari FTL drive, but modified to create an effect never intended by its designers. Put simply, the device would create a localized distortion in space-time, a miniature black hole that would collapse after seconds, but not before consuming everything within its radius. The energy released would be catastrophic. "Alpha team in position," reported a communications officer. "Defiance preparing for launch." "Beta and Gamma teams report ready," added another. Elena checked her own displays, confirming the device's stability. She had designed them, understood the physics better than anyone on Earth, yet the power they represented still terrified her. If all 3 detonated as planned, the Khazari fleet would be devastated. If they malfunctioned, she pushed the thought aside. They had no choice. "All Prometheus devices showing green," she confirmed. "Activate final arming sequence." On her tablet, she entered a complex code, then pressed her palm to the biometric scanner. Across the world, her counterparts on the other 2 devices did the same. The weapons were now armed, set to detonate either on command or if their carrier vessels were destroyed. "May God forgive us," she whispered to herself. Operation Valkyrie began with a feint, humanity's remaining orbital defenses launching a seemingly desperate attack against the approaching Khazari fleet. Fighters equipped with disruptor weapons engaged the alien vessels from multiple vectors, focusing on smaller ships at the fleet's perimeter. Fleet Admiral Krasix observed the battle with disdain. Pathetic. They throw their remaining forces against us in a futile gesture. The humans are employing unusual tactics, noted Xerix, studying the tactical display. Their fighters are targeting our smaller vessels, avoiding direct confrontation with our capital ships. A logical choice when facing superior firepower, Krasix replied dismissively. They seek small victories before their inevitable defeat. Xerix wasn't convinced. Perhaps Fleet Admiral, but their attack pattern seems designed to. Alert! Interrupted the sensor officer. 3 vessels detected approaching from the planet's dark side. Configuration unknown. Show me, demanded Krasix. The view screen shifted to show 3 sleek vessels accelerating toward the Khazari fleet. They appeared to be modified human submarines, now repurposed for space travel. Curious, Krasix mused. What do they hope to accomplish with such primitive craft? Fleet Admiral, Xerix insisted. Those vessels are employing Khazari stealth technology. They're using our own systems against us. That got Krasix's attention. Target those ships immediately. All available weapons. But the human vessels had already penetrated deep into the Khazari formation, each heading toward a different dreadnought, including the Eternal Dominion. Aboard the Defiance, Marcus watched as they approached their target, the massive dreadnought at the center of the Khazari fleet. So far, their modified stealth systems had worked, the ship's signature masked by the chaos of the ongoing battle. Distance to target, he asked. 2,000 kilometers in closing, reported the navigation officer. We've been detected, Captain. Enemy vessels are breaking formation to intercept. Marcus nodded grimly. Evasive maneuvers. Maximum speed. The Defiance surged forward, weaving through the Khazari formation. Energy beams lanced past them as alien weapons tried to lock on to their rapidly moving target. Target in range in 60 seconds, announced the weapons officer. Prometheus device ready for deployment. Marcus opened a secure channel to the other strike teams. Alpha team in position. Beta, Gamma, report status. Beta team on approach, heavy resistance. Came the strained reply. We'll make it. Gamma team at deployment range. Preparing to activate device. Marcus took a deep breath. Remember, we need synchronized detonation for maximum effect. On my mark, deploy devices and immediately jump to FTL to escape the blast radius. A violent shudder ran through the ship as an energy beam grazed their hull. Shields at 60%, reported Lieutenant Sado. Direct hit will breach containment. 30 seconds to deployment range, called the navigation officer. Marcus watched as the massive Khazari dreadnought filled their view screen. The vessel was an imposing sight, nearly 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could vaporize the Defiance in seconds. 20 seconds. Another hit rocked the ship. Shields at 40%. 10 seconds. Marcus gripped his chair as the Defiance made its final approach. All teams, prepare to deploy on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. On the command deck of the Eternal Dominion, chaos erupted as proximity alarms blared. The human vessel was almost upon them, somehow evading the bulk of their defensive fire. Impossible, Krasix snarled. No primitive craft should be able to penetrate our defenses. Xerix watched the tactical display with a growing sense of dread. The human vessel wasn't attempting to attack with conventional weapons. It was simply trying to get close. Very close. Fleet Admiral, he said urgently, we must engage emergency FTL. The humans have deployed some kind of device. His warning came too late. The human vessel suddenly accelerated away at impossible speed, while a small object remained behind, pulsing with energy. What is? Krasix began. The universe seemed to fold in on itself, A point of absolute darkness appeared where the device had been, expanding rapidly to engulf the front section of the dreadnought. The ship's material simply vanished, consumed by the artificial singularity. Then came the collapse, a release of energy so violent it tore the remainder of the massive vessel apart. Similar events unfolded simultaneously across the Khazari fleet as the Beta and Gamma teams successfully deployed their own Prometheus devices. 3 dreadnoughts, including the fleet's command vessel, vanished in cataclysmic explosions that sent shockwaves through nearby ships. In an instant, the core of the Khazari formation was gone. Dr. Alina Reyes watched the sensor data with a mixture of awe and horror. The Prometheus devices had worked exactly as theorized, perhaps too well. The artificial singularities had consumed the target dreadnoughts before collapsing, releasing energy equivalent to several nuclear detonations. "Status of our strike teams?" she asked urgently. Alpha Team, Defiance, successfully jumped to FTL before detonation. Beta Team status unknown. Gamma Team. The officer hesitated. Gamma Team did not escape the blast radius. Alina closed her eyes briefly, a silent acknowledgement of their sacrifice. Khazari Fleet status. General Hayes demanded. Massive casualties, General. 3 dreadnoughts destroyed, along with dozens of support vessels. Their formation is in disarray. Hayes nodded grimly, launched the second phase. All remaining forces engage. Earth's defense forces, fighters, converted civilian vessels, and captured Khazari ships surged forward, exploiting the chaos created by the Prometheus detonations. Their disruptor weapons tore through the confused Khazari formations, targeting command vessels and weapons platforms. "General," called a communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Defiance. Captain Chen is requesting permission to execute Operation Sunspear." Hayes exchanged a look with Alina. Operation Sunspear was even more desperate than Valkyrie, a direct assault on the Khazari homeworld. The intelligence gathered during Operation Thunderstrike had revealed the location of the Khazari central government and, more importantly, a critical vulnerability in their society. "Granted," Hayes said finally. "Godspeed, Captain Chen." Captain Marcus Chen looked at his battered but intact crew as the Defiance emerged from FTL at a safe distance from the battle. They had succeeded. Their Prometheus device had destroyed its target. But the mission wasn't over. "Damage report," he ordered. "Shields at 15%. Hull breaches on decks 2 and 3, contained by emergency bulkheads. FTL drive operational but strained." Lieutenant Seto managed a tight smile. "We're still in the fight, Captain." Marcus nodded. "Status of the Sunspear package. Secure and ready for deployment. The biological agent is stable." During her research, Dr. Reyes had made a crucial discovery about Khazari biology. Their mirror image amino acids, which initially presented a challenge for developing biological weapons, had revealed a critical weakness. A synthesized compound, harmless to humans, but devastating to Khazari biochemistry, could potentially neutralize their entire species. The ethical debate had been fierce, but faced with extinction, humanity had made its choice. Operation Sunspear would deliver this compound to the Khazari homeworld, not to exterminate them, but to incapacitate their civilization long enough for humanity to secure its survival. "Set course for the Khazari homeworld," Marcus ordered. "Maximum FTL speed." As the Defiance prepared to jump again, he opened a channel to Earth. "This is Captain Chen to Global Command. Operation Valkyrie successful. Proceeding with Operation Sunspear. Will return with their surrender, or not at all." The Defiance vanished into FTL, bound for the heart of the Khazari Dominion. The battle for Earth continued for hours, but the tide had turned decisively. With their command structure decimated by the Prometheus devices, the Khazari fleet fell into disarray. Individual ship captains attempted to regroup, but the humans pressed their advantage relentlessly. In the remains of the Eternal Dominion, High Commander Xerix had survived, protected by an emergency shield when the bridge collapsed. As he dragged himself through the wreckage, He accessed a still-functioning terminal to assess the situation. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. The fleet was in chaos, 3 dreadnoughts destroyed, and the humans were systematically eliminating their remaining forces. Worse, the Defiance, he recognized the vessel from intelligence reports, had escaped the battle entirely, jumping to FTL on a course that could only lead to one destination: the Khazari homeworld. Xerix knew what that meant. Somehow, the humans had discovered the Dominion's greatest secret, the vulnerability of their biochemistry. If they deployed a targeted pathogen on the homeworld, he had to warn them. With desperate determination, Xerix fought his way to an intact escape pod and launched away from the dying dreadnought. Once clear, he activated its emergency FTL drive. A limited capability, but perhaps enough to reach a communication relay. As stars streaked past the small viewport, Xerix confronted an uncomfortable truth. He had underestimated the humans from the beginning. They should have studied the species more carefully before invasion. They should have recognized the danger these adaptable, innovative creatures represented. Now it might be too late, not just for the invasion force, but for the Dominion itself. 28 days later, the Defiance emerged from FTL at the edge of the Khazari home system. The journey had been fraught with challenges: navigation through unknown space, emergency repairs to the strained FTL drive, and the constant fear of pursuit. But they had made it. "Scan the system," Marcus ordered. "Any signs they're expecting us?" Lieutenant Seto studied her console. Minimal orbital defenses detected. Standard patrol vessels. No indication of heightened alert status. They don't know we're coming, Marcus realized. And with their command structure in disarray after Operation Valkyrie, this might actually work, Seto finished. Marcus studied the tactical display showing the Khazari homeworld, a dusty, arid planet orbiting a red sun. Intelligence indicated the majority of their population lived in vast underground hives, with only military and government facilities on the surface. "Take us in, stealth systems at maximum. Target the atmospheric processors." The Defiance glided silently through the Khazari system, evading the patrol vessels with ease. As they approached the homeworld, Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions. Determination, certainly, but also a profound sense of responsibility. What they were about to do would change the course of 2 civilizations forever. "In position, Captain," reported the navigation officer. "Atmospheric processors within range." Marcus took a deep breath. "Deploy the Sun Spear package." Canisters launched from the Defiance, entering the Khazari atmosphere and dispersing their contents into the processors that circulated air throughout the underground hives. The compound, designed by Dr. Rice and her team, would render the Khazari temporarily paralyzed without causing permanent harm. "Package deployed successfully," confirmed the weapons officer. "Dispersion progressing as predicted." "Now we wait," Marcus said quietly. Hours passed as they maintained position, monitoring the planet below. Gradually, communication traffic from the surface diminished. Military vessels in orbit stopped receiving orders. The compound was working. "Captain," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's from the Supreme Overlord's palace." Marcus straightened in his chair. "Put it through." The view screen activated, showing a Khazari unlike any they had seen before. Larger, its exoskeleton marked with elaborate gold and crimson patterns. Despite the obvious effects of the paralytic compound, it managed to speak. "I am Supreme Overlord Kha'Zix," it clicked weakly. "What have you done to us?" Marcus met the alien's gaze steadily. "We've administered a compound that temporarily paralyzes your species. It's not lethal, but it will keep your civilization incapacitated for approximately 6 months. Why not kill us? After what we did to your world?" "Because we're not like you," Marcus replied simply. "We don't seek conquest or extermination. We want only to ensure our survival." He leaned forward. "These are our terms. The Khazari Dominion will immediately cease all hostilities against Earth. All human prisoners will be returned. You will provide reparations in the form of technology transfer to help rebuild what you destroyed. And finally, you will acknowledge Earth and the Sol system as sovereign, protected territory, permanently off-limits to the Dominion. The Supreme Overlord's mandibles clicked slowly. And if we refuse? We have the formula for this compound and dozens of others, specifically designed for Khazari biochemistry. We can deploy them at any time, anywhere in your territory. Next time, we might choose something less humane. A long silence followed as the Supreme Overlord considered the situation. Its civilization lay paralyzed, its invasion fleet destroyed, and its homeworld at the mercy of creatures it had dismissed as primitives mere months ago. We accept your terms, it finally clicked. Marcus nodded. A wise decision. We'll transmit the full details of our agreement, including verification protocols. Representatives of the Global Defense Coalition will arrive within 60 days to formalize the treaty. As the transmission ended, the Bridge of the Defiance erupted in subdued celebration. Against all odds, they had succeeded. Humanity had not only survived, but had forced one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations to terms. Set course for Earth, Marcus ordered once the initial euphoria had passed. Maximum sustainable speed. Let's go home. 6 months later, Dr. Elena Rice stood on a platform in what had once been Times Square, now the site of the new United Earth headquarters. The rebuilding of New York and cities around the world had begun in earnest, aided by technology provided by the Khazari as part of the reparations agreement. Beside her stood General Hayes, Captain Chen, and representatives from every nation on Earth. Before them, a crowd of thousands had gathered to witness a historic moment: the signing of the Sol System Protection Treaty by the Khazari Supreme Overlord. The alien ruler, recovered from the effects of the Sunspear compound, approached the treaty table with a delegation of subdued Khazari officials. Among them, Elena recognized High Commander Xerix, who had somehow survived the destruction of the Eternal Dominion and had subsequently been instrumental in convincing the Dominion to honor the peace terms. Never would I have imagined this outcome, General Hayes murmured to Elena as they watched the ceremony. 6 months ago, we were fighting for our very existence. And now we're a space-faring civilization with diplomatic relations with an alien empire, Elena replied with a small smile. Humanity is nothing if not adaptable. The Supreme Overlord affixed its mark to the treaty, followed by the newly elected President of United Earth. With that simple act, humanity's status as a protected, sovereign species was formally recognized. As applause erupted from the crowd, Captain Chen joined Elena and Hayes. "Not bad for a species they considered primitives," he remarked. "They won't make that mistake again," Hayes said. "And neither will anyone else." Elena looked up at the sky, where the first of Earth's new defense platforms was visible as a bright point of light. Beyond it, shipyards were constructing vessels that would soon explore the stars, not for conquest, but for discovery. "What do you think happens next?" she asked. Ken followed her gaze upward. "We rebuild, we learn, we explore, and we remember that when our existence was threatened, we didn't break. We didn't surrender." Hayes nodded. "And anyone else out there who might be watching should remember one crucial lesson." "What's that?" asked Elena. Hayes smiled grimly. "Beware the rage of humanity, for no force in the galaxy can stand against it." As the celebration continued around them, Elena thought about how far they had come, from a species on the brink of extinction to one poised to take its place among the stars. The journey had been brutal, the cost incalculable, but humanity had emerged not just intact, but transformed. And the galaxy would never be the same.